Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be seeing if phone cameras really have changed in the past 10 years or so, and if so, by how much. So, of course, to test this I needed two phones that were roughly 10 or so years apart in age, preferably of the same price caliber. Because of this, I decided to go with the Samsung Galaxy S5 as the old phone, and the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra as the new phone. On paper, the Galaxy S5 has a 16 megapixel sensor, while the Galaxy S21 Ultra has a 108 megapixel sensor, meaning the Galaxy S21 Ultra has roughly around 6 times the pixels as the S5. However, in real-world performance, it's often very different from purely paper stats, so we will be doing a few photo tests to see how much of a difference there really is between the two phones. Another thing I want to point out is that these phones technically aren't 10 years apart, they're actually 7 years apart or so, but I can't get my hands on anything older or newer, so just add about 3 years difference onto these results. As a bonus, video samples will be recorded by the phone that is not in the recording, if that makes sense. Starting off with outdoor photos, the S5 held up pretty well. I started off with taking a photo of this flower, and across the two phones the detail was pretty consistent, with the S5 actually having more true-to-life colors. This carried over in more photos I took. Unless you really cropped in on the details, the photos looked pretty similar. While the photos on the S21 Ultra did appear a bit sharper, it also had a sort of overprocessed look, for example the dynamic range of the photos, leading to a poorer look in my opinion. The S5 had more accurate photos that I honestly prefer to the oversaturated and processed photos of the S21 Ultra. Moving things indoors, I started by taking a photo of another camera. This is when the S21 Ultra really began to pull ahead of the S5. Over the past 10 years, the light sensitivity and processing of camera sensors has really improved, meaning the S5 often struggled to capture all the details in lower light conditions. Just look at the loss in detail here. This was present in other dimly lit photos as well, with the S5 constantly having grainier photos with less detail, while the S21 Ultra was able to preserve detail and sharpness, even in dimmer conditions. Then, moving on to some night photos, things got even worse. The S21 Ultra has a special night mode feature, meaning that photos in lower light conditions came out very excellent. It's honestly a marvel what cameras can do these days. Looking at photos taken by the S21 Ultra, it managed to capture much of the detail without sacrificing much quality, in even situations when it was almost completely dark. The S5, however, fared quite poorly because it has no night mode, and the sensor was left to struggle to capture the dim light, and it already underperforms in this aspect, meaning dark scenes where the S21 Ultra had no trouble at all turned out grainy and unintelligible. Most of the time you couldn't even see anything in the photos, besides some faint reflections, or in this case, the computer keys that were lighting up. Next, I moved on to testing the HDR capabilities of these phones. Here, I used a spot where the sun hits my bed because it creates some very strong contrast. The S5 actually holds up very well in this area as it has a built-in HDR mode, meaning it can deal pretty well with photos with extreme darks and bright highlights. The S21 Ultra also has this feature built in, so it has no trouble at all capturing this photo. Looking at the two photos, they look pretty similar, but the S21 Ultra seems to have a slight edge in its dynamic range here. All things considered though, the S5 is nearly identical to the S21 Ultra in this aspect. Next, I decided to test the zoom on the two phones. Already, the S21 Ultra has a major advantage, as it has a multi-camera setup with an extra 3x zoom and 10x zoom camera, where the S5 only has a single camera. Because of this, the S5 had less zoom, and that zoom was digital, meaning it cropped into the photo, losing major detail. Taking a photo of a tree at 4x zoom, the maximum of the S5, resulted in fuzzy and grainy photo that looked pretty terrible. The S21 Ultra, however, managed this with ease and the photo came out clear and sharp. Next, I moved on to macro photography. The S21 Ultra is able to enter a special focus mode when taking close-up photos due to its ultra-wide camera. This meant that taking photos mere centimeters from the camera was an easy task and produced some pretty nice results. The S5, as mentioned before, only has one camera, meaning that it was not able to focus on near objects and macro shots came out very blurry. I also tested the front cameras on both phones, and starting off with the S21 Ultra, the result was pretty poor. The photo was muddy and lacked proper detail, as well as having exposure issues. This still resembled a Picasso, however, when compared to the S5's front-facing camera. I don't even know how to describe this photo, other than it being simply horrible. As a bonus, I did some 4K 30fps recordings on both phones, and the results were pretty similar. The only thing that seemed better on the S21 Ultra was the dynamic range, and possibly the colors, though I kind of preferred the look the S5 has at the same time. When there was movement in the video though, the S21 Ultra fared better, as movement during recording resulted in more blurriness on the S5. Overall, the S5, while clearly weaker than the S21 Ultra, has less of a difference than you might expect, for being 8 years older. During scenarios with ample light, like outside during the daylight, there was barely any difference between the two phones, to the point that I even somewhat preferred the photos of the S5, due to them looking less processed and more true to life. When the lights went out, however, there was a clear difference between the phones, and it is clear for the past decade major leaps have been made in night photography on phone cameras. Due to this, older phones still hold up very well to daylight shooting conditions, but during the night, newer phones will take much better photos. Overall though, I was very pleased with the results, and I'm happy to say that the Samsung S5 is still doing quite well for being a 9-year-old phone. Anyways, thanks for watching, maybe consider holding onto your old phone if you have one for a few more years, and have a nice day.